Shabla solva demek mezevendirce can razedeme şemme vambo cemme yanganca havezok can zanghavalo Sanda Gejala Solvan Demek Meze
Heart Sutra.
뭐 그래 싫으니 불러.
Savaraja Dehoje Maravada and Josema Semba Chambo Avgajara Sagwanche Getanam Sherevo de Davola Dehoje Maraso Sherevo Ikjivo Am Ikjivo Mo Amlala Sherevje Maraldo Jama Samajatwajat Satwa de Ditranam Paradavaraje Kumbang Ranjanje Dambara Yanda Gwaraje Sodango Lango Sodambanga Ambane Saksa Solajan Ambane Chamayan Netlajan Joshamayan Devshan Sarvadan Dushetan Duchetan Ambara Javan Amdamba Sherevade Davan Shadamjet Ambaneta Sanemeta Machagwa Magagwa Yama Medwa Yamata Maradwa Medwa Perma Medwa Kongwa Medwa Cherevade Davana Ambaneta Sogme Sarvame Dusheme Duchetme Ambara Javame Megme Navame Name Jeme Dome Yedme Sogme Dame Deme Rame Rikjame Chame Dam Yem Ahmed Wana Echem Ahmed Echem Ambara Jeve Hamjem Bardo Yemeto Maregwa Maregwa Zadwa Metwana Hashem Hasheve Zato Vardo Yemeto Devshen Tongo Luatan Kunjo Watan Kogwatan Tame Deshem Tawamet Madavemeto Sherevade Davana Enjo Zemba Shirav Jam Haraldo Jama Sama De La Denjama De Timla Dev Michin Lagwa Mite Chinje Lala Chindu Dana Nyangam Dane Tarjama Do Samdo Gambara Shavge Sanja Damje Shirav Jam Haraldo Jama Sama De La Dena Medvayam Dagwara Zagwe Janjata Ambara Zagwara Zanjesa Tetavam Shirav Jambharal Dojim Benga Kirikwa Jimbenga Tama Medvenga Minim Batanyam Chetvenga Tongo Lamja Arauto Jabara Chetvenga Vidamama Embara Jabara Chet Shirav Jambharal Dojim Benga Marewa Datyata Om Gati Gati Paragat Prasam Gati Vati Soha Shirivo Chancho Samba Samba Cham Samje Titir Shirav Jambharal Dojim Basavala Lav Chango Tine Jamdanda Tingan Zindana Shende Chancho Samba Samba Cham Oga Jaran Sagavanchal Diksa Shechava Chema Diksa Diksa Ekchev Didev Shema Ekchevo Didev Shende Titir Chachi Damba Dechendo Sher Paraldo Shema Jatora Jata Deshen Shangwa Tamje Jeso Yerangwa Chamdana Tega Chega Tama Seta Nama Sherevota Enjo Zamba Zamba Jamba Bhagwa Jaran Savanjet Hamje Daname Harde Dedan Hata Medan Lamayan Desere Jeve Jekte Yerende Jamdana Sambalang Umbara Tata
Mandala offering.
That His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, the root guru, is about to start the third day precious teachings now. Therefore, on behalf of all the monks and devotees, I am sincerely requesting Your Holiness, the root Guru, to kindly bestow your precious teachings, the three principal aspects of the path, for us now.
야, 야, 따뜻히.
So today,
안다. 룽지 자제토네.
through this webcast
전부 홀. 이거다 간대고.
to the Mongolian, the great Mongolian nation, with Garden Technical Monastery, the central monastery of Mongolia, as the main, and then the rest of the Mongolia. The teaching is on the three principal aspects of the path by Je Rinpoche, and in one of his miscellaneous writings, the person who requested for this teaching was Tsongkhapa Ngawantakpa, from a distant land. He was living in, at that time, Gyamorong, in the southeastern part of Tibet. And on his request for an instruction, Je Rinpoche gave these three principal aspects of the path. And he says, Je Rinpoche says, follow what I have told you and practice what I have instructed to you. And when I become enlightened, a Buddha, I will give you the first share of my nectar of teaching. So the profound and the extensive teachings that I have given you, Je Rinpoche says, you should practice them, and then this will create the right circumstance for you to be born amongst my first disciples when I become a Buddha. And at the end of the three principles paths, there's mention of my son. So this includes us as well, where he says, "O son, seek solitude," and so forth. So, of course, it may not be appropriate for me to say this, but I was born in the same nativity. Je Rinpoche was born in Kumbum, and I was born in Hunan, which was very close to that place. And so I feel quite close, spiritually also close, mentally close with Je Rinpoche. And so this mention of son here, O son, actually also includes us all as well. And so, as Je Rinpoche has told Tsongkhapa, we should also make the determination that we will practice his teachings sincerely. As the Buddha said, the sages do not wash away the sins of sentient beings, nor do they remove their suffering with their hands, nor do they transpose their own, shift their own realizations within others. So our evil deeds cannot be rinsed or cleansed or washed away by water, and the suffering that we have cannot be removed with his hands, the Buddha's hands, and the realizations within the Buddha cannot be transferred to others. As Buddhists, we say, you are your own master, and therefore we need to go through the process of learning and develop understanding based on that. And then whatever we have learned, day and night, we should use our critical analytical mind. And we should try to develop this single-pointed concentration without forgetting the teachings that we have learned. And then we should also use the analytical meditation, so that these two, the analytical and the focusing meditation, go together. Je Rinpoche himself has written 18 volumes of works, collected works, for the benefit of his future disciples or followers. And therefore, Je Rinpoche's realization, in order for those kind of realizations to be generated or developed within ourselves, we must study his writings and reflect on those teachings, and then meditate, so that study, reflection, and meditation are not divorced from one another. And so I have some kind of attachment to Je Rinpoche, being from the same native place. And Je Rinpoche himself, as his source of his writings are based on Master Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti is our Madhyamaka Avatara, and its auto-commentary, which I keep beside myself and read them whenever I have time. And then, with regards to emptiness, there is Je Rinpoche's differentiating the provisional and definitive meanings of the sutras, and then Chandrakirti's auto-commentary and its root text, Madhyamaka Avatara. Use them and read them daily. And with regard to Bodhichitta, then Master Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatara is an incredible text, where he teaches the cultivating bodhicitta based on equally and exchanging self and others. And with regard to the profound view aspect of the teaching, I base myself on Master Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara and its commentary. And then there is this commentary by Je Rinpoche. And Je Rinpoche mentions about how he relied on Master Chandrakirti in his praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. And in order to be able to help others, we need to attain the Buddha's form body, a physical dimension, so that the Buddha can appear as the supreme emanation body for those who have quite a strong, pure karma, with powerful merit. And in order to be able to get rid of all the stains or defilements within our mind completely, we need to combine the understanding of emptiness with the bodhicitta. So as soon as I wake up, I reflect on bodhicitta, and I cultivate or generate bodhicitta based on these lines for the benefit of oneself and others. I shall generate bodhicitta this altruistic intention, spirit of enlightenment. And then with regard to the emptiness, I recite these lines from Madhyamaka chapter 6 that says that a noble being's mind which is totally absorbed in emptiness would be a destroyer of entities, and that the conventional truth would be which mentions these points, the four logical absurdities. So Johor Kyotpen Rinpoche used to say, the late Kyotpen Rinpoche, the insight sections of Je Rinpoche's Lamrim Chemo and Lamrim, the intermediate Lamrim, and then the commentary on Mula Madhyamaka Avatara, the ocean of reasoning, and commentary on Madhyamaka Avatara, the elucidation of thought or intent, and the differentiation between the definitive and provisional meanings of the sutras. So Gyente Horkyopen used to say that if you study these 5 Madhyamaka texts written by Je Tsongkhapa, then you will gain insight into the profound emptiness. And so it's not enough just to have the text with you and read it just to have studied them for one time, but you need to read them over and over again, so that having studied Je Rinpoche's writings on Madhyamaka view, the middle way view, you should be able to gain a conviction in this profound view of the middle way. So I'm not being too much here, but I do give thoughts to and reflect on, contemplate on middle way and Bodhichitta. And this is not just called a kind of intellectual exercise, but it really helps me to have peace of mind, which in turn gives rise to a good physical health, and so that as we do prayer, may I never be separated from the perfect gurus from life after life. So by using Je Rinpoche's writings and meditating on Bodhichitta and that of the Bodhichitta and the middle way, I also feel that I am being true to the instructions given by Je Rinpoche in terms of practicing the Dharma sincerely, so that I would be able to follow him after life. And I do make these prayers for to be able to practice and continue to practice these principles life after life. And I also pray for others as well to be able to do that. And so the 3 principles refer to the thoughts to be free from, determination to be free from samsara, bodhicitta, the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, and the correct view. And so the first line in this text says homage to the most venerable teachers, which also shows that of reliance on Guru in order to be able to tread along the path to enlightenment. We need to practice the purification of negativities and accumulation of merit, which in turn can be done on the basis of reliance on Guru. And then the verse number 1, I shall explain here to the best of my ability the essential points of all scriptures of the conquerors. The essential points of all the scriptures of the conqueror means all the teachings of the Buddha are meant for liberation and omniscience. So these three principal paths, renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view, subsume the entire teaching of the Buddha, and then the path acclaimed by all the excellent bodhisattvas, the gateway for fortunate ones, aspiring for liberation. And then it says, I shall explain here to the best of my ability these, so which in turn shows humility. This so Rinpoche says that I will teach to the best of my ability in a brief way, but with a complete teaching. And then next verse next shows urging the receptive disciples to listen to the teaching. So those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, down to, O fortunate ones, listen with an open heart, clear and open heart. Who strive to make meaningful this life of leisure and opportunity, and who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors. And next, verse number 3 shows the reason for renunciation. Why we need to have renunciation? So the whole of samsara is under the force of, under the sway of our karma and mental afflictions. So because of these two factors, which in turn boil down to that of, is rooted in ignorance, we are propelled in this samsara again and again, and therefore it says, without pure renunciation, there is no means to pacify the yearning for the joys of and fruits of samsaric oceans, and as craving for existence chain us thoroughly at first, search for true renunciation. And then next verse, number 4, shows how we should cultivate this renunciation. Verse number 4 shows that of the path common to shared by beings of small faculty or scope, where within that teaching there is the teaching on the impermanence and death. And so if you are able to think, well, think closely about the subtle impermanence, which is the moment-by-moment change in things, the transient nature, then you'll also be able to have a good conviction in the grosser forms or aspects of impermanence, such as death. So verse number 3 shows the reason why we should cultivate renunciation. Verse number 4, how to cultivate it. And then verse number 5 shows what is the measure of having developed this true renunciation. As you habituate in this way, and when not even an instant of admiration arises for the prosperities of cyclic existence, and so forth. And then next, the reason why we should, verse number 6 shows reason why we should develop bodhicitta. So without which we cannot reach Buddhahood or omniscient state, but may be led to that of the Arahant ship of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And then verse number 7 shows how to develop this the spirit of enlightenment. They are being swept away constantly by four powerful rivers. They are bound tightly with fetters of karma, most difficult to escape. They are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. They are enveloped from everywhere by thick mist of ignorance. So you are swept by these four rivers of birth, death, sickness, and aging due to karma, which creates samsaric existence, and therefore you are tightly bound by the fetters of karma, most difficult to escape, and also the afflictive mental afflictions, and mainly that of the self-grasping ignorance. They are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping, which may be understood to interpreted as referring to the grasping at the self of a person. And for that to happen, there needs to be this grasping at the self or independent existence of our aggregates and all these appearances that are external to us, apparent objects that appear to us. And therefore they are enveloped from everywhere by this thick mist of ignorance, which means that of the ignorance or grasping at the self of phenomena. Without being able to cut it, we cannot overcome the self-grasping of a person. And they take birth within cyclic existence that has no end, where they are endlessly tormented by the three sufferings. By reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening mind. So these two verses, number 7 and 8, show the method or the means of generating bodhicitta. And I use these two lines also in connection with renunciation, where I switch the lines, the last two lines, by saying, by reflecting on myself who suffers such conditions, generate that of renunciation. So when you think about your own condition in samsara and see the faults and disadvantages of self-grasping attitude or this ignorance, and you feel that this must be cut, uprooted, and therefore with that determination you develop that of renunciation. And when you turn around and switch it with the rest of the sentient beings, the mother sentient beings, then you generate bodhicitta, the supreme awakening mind. So with regard to bodhicitta, there are two systems of generating it: the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, and the equaling and exchanging self and others. And so the latter is much more powerful than the former, a means of developing this altruistic supreme awakening. In the 400 verses of the Master Aryadeva, he says that first get rid of non-meritorious actions, and then in the middle get rid of this notion of a self, and finally get rid of all views or distorted views. The one who is able to do that is a wise one. So the first line here refers to getting rid of those causes leading to the lower realms of existence in the next rebirth, and creating the causes for higher rebirth, and then get rid of the self-grasping attitude. And then the final line shows how we should overcome all our defilements. And in order for that to happen, we need to practice what Master Shantideva has taught in Bodhisattva Charavatara, where he says, without exchanging self and others, as the one's joy and happiness with the suffering of others, there's leave alone reaching Buddhahood. Even in samsara, you will have no happiness. And then he also mentions, thus, which intelligent person would despair to ride the horse of Bodhichitta, which leads one from blissful to state to blissful state, and does away with all despondency. So we have the potential for developing this bodhicitta based on equaling and exchanging self and others. So verses 7 and 8 can be used to develop renunciation in regards to oneself, in relation to oneself, and bodhicitta in relation to sentient beings. And then verse number 9, if you do not have the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, even if you gain familiarity with renunciation and awakening mind, you will not be able to cut the root of samsaric existence. So strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. Without being able to have this insight into the final reality of how things are, even though you may cultivate renunciation and bodhicitta for a long time, you will not be able to cut the root of samsara. And therefore you need the wisdom of emptiness. And Master Chandrakirti in the Bodhisattva in Madhyamaka Avatara says that because of this the transitory view, the view of transitory collections, and we have all these mental afflictions, as Master Aryadeva also mentions in the 400 verses, just as the physical faculty, sense faculty permeates all other faculties, likewise ignorance permeates all other mental afflictions. And so, bodhicitta, even though you may have the experience of it, it doesn't counter as the diametrically opposite to this view of the ignorance. So what happens with ignorance is that things appear to us as if they have some existence from their own side, and then this ignorance actually holds on to that, so that the self is not seen as being designated, as a designated object on the basis of the 5 psychophysical aggregates. And the mind so there are philosophical schools who actually posit that a self, the entity or the identity of a person is finally that of a consciousness. So they pick something from amongst the 5 aggregates as the entity or the identity of a person, whereas the Prasangikas do not accept or assert such a view. As I have quoted these lines from the Madhyamaka Avatara, the verses 34, chapter 6, verse number 34, where it said, if things were to have, if you can actually pinpoint or point your finger at something being this or that, then the Arya being's mind or wisdom which is totally absorbed in emptiness, after having done all thorough the analysis of how things exist thoroughly, and they find that things have no objective existence whatever. But if that wisdom mind of an Arya being would be a destroyer of the entities, because it doesn't find things having any objective independent existence. And then verse number 35 shows that so the first verse number, that previous verse shows that an Arya being's wisdom mind would be a destroyer of entities, and then this verse number 35 shows that things would have some kind of a the conventional reality of things. The conventional truth would withstand the analysis of a reasoning mind probing the ultimate nature of things. So we do talk about a valid cognition which perceives or cognizes objects. So this verse number 35 shows that there is no object which exists from its own side, whatever, as the object of a valid cognition. So when you do this critical analysis into how things exist, then you will not be able to find anything being a true identity that we can pinpoint at. And therefore, you come to the conclusion that things exist merely by way of designation. And then verse number 36 shows that an absolute production of things cannot be denied if you actually assert any independent objective existence in things. And then in the auto commentary of Madhyamaka Avatara, Master Chandrakirti quotes some lines from sutras, and then he mentions that the Buddha's statement, phenomena lack self-existence, would not hold true if you assert that things have some objective independent existence. And then Master Chandrakirti also in this 6th chapter says that if you analyze things in the 7 terms of logical analysis that we use in analyzing a chariot, nothing can be found. But things still do exist by conventionally. So here Rinpoche says, so strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. And in Chone Lama Rinpoche's mostly versified text, which is a commentary to Rinpoche's praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination, he says, by dependence, that of the reality of things or suchness is not abandoned or rejected. And by origination, because of all these conventions and causes and conditions, things do affect us in whether good or bad. And therefore origination, he says, Chone Lama Rinpoche says, by origination, the Buddha accords with the conventions of the world. Therefore, this dependent origination is like the king of reasonings. And verse number 10 shows that everything in samsara and nirvana, although to us they appear to have some objective independent existence, yet they do not have such an existence. If you closely check, as it says, with respect to all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, you see that cause and effects never deceive the laws. And when you have dismantled the focus of objectification, at that point you have entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. And so long as the two understandings of appearance, there is the conventionalities of things, which is undeceiving dependent origination, and emptiness devoid of all thesis, remain separate, so long you have not realized the intent of the sage. So what we need to understand is that things and their emptiness cannot be taken to be distinct from each other or separate from each other. Because things are there, therefore they are empty, and because they are empty, they exist by way of designation. And verse number 12. However, at some point, when without alternation, but at once, the instant you see that dependent origination is undeceiving, if the entire object grasping at certitudes is dismantled, this refers to ignorance which grasps at true existence. In Panjan Lobsang Chogyin's debate between ego grasping and wisdom, he mentions this. So this grasping at certitude is dismantled. Grasping at certitude refers to ignorance grasping at true existence. At that point, your analysis of the view has culminated, or those things do appear to us as if they have some objective existence, but through your own analysis and reflection, you'll be able to confirm that that's not how things exist. Things exist merely as appearance. As Madhyamaka Avatara also mentions, that things are merely designated, so that mere appearance, which is to say that things are merely nominal and designated. And then furthermore, when appearance dispels the extremes of existence, and when emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence, and so by the verse number 13, first line, it shows that things do exist, but not independently or objectively, whereas they are empty. They are not nothing, but what this dispels is that of the extreme of nihilism. So the first line and verse 13 shows the dispelling of the extreme of permanence. So non-existence here or emptiness doesn't mean nothing is there, but the things and beings are empty of how they appear to us. So because there is a basis of emptiness, basis for us to say things are empty, therefore we can say that they are empty of inherent existence. And so, through the mere designation and through dependence,
편연제등의 지기 차용이
We can say that things have no independent objective existence, but when we do not do any kind of a critical analysis into how things exist, they do exist by way of convention. And if you understand how emptiness arises as cause and effect, you'll never be captivated by views grasping at extremes. Thus, when you have understood as they are the essentials of the three principal paths, O son, seek solitude, and by enhancing, strengthening the power of perseverance, swiftly accomplish your ultimate aspiration. So the reference, O son, includes all of us as well. And so when you do Gadan Hajama, the 100 deities of Tushita heaven, and meditate on Rinpoche, and then imagine that Rinpoche is actually speaking to you, saying these lines of this text. Then you will be, and then you do the analytical as well as the focusing meditations. And then at the end, imagine, visualize that Rinpoche is instructing you. Thus, when you have understood as they are the essentials of the three principal paths, O son, seek solitude, and by strengthening your perseverance, swiftly accomplish your ultimate aspirations. So have this view or understanding or visualization that Rinpoche instructs you in person. O son, seek solitude and enhancing the power of perseverance, swiftly accomplish your ultimate aspiration. This advice was given to Tsaku Wampo Ngawan Tragpa by the monk Losang Tragpa Pel. And then there is some colophon for printing the postscript or something. So it says that there is this tradition of some holy beings. I have printed this according to this the traditional instructions. So this completes the teaching on the three principal paths. So, O son, seek solitude and strengthening the force of your perseverance or diligence. By using the fivefold reasoning or the sevenfold reasoning to establish emptiness, not merely leaving them in words, but not being satisfied with that, but every day you should reflect on these reasonings so that you'll be able to develop the understanding based on having studied and listening to the teaching, and then develop the understanding based on reflection, and then integrate that within your meditation. And so to my Mongolian Dharma friends, and then I'm sure there are monks in the great monastic seats of learning also listening to this teaching. And then with regards to the study of Parchin, Prajaparamita studies, and Madhyamaka, and then the logic and reason, using epistemological texts to sharpen our mind, to gain insight into these teachings of the study of Madhyamaka and perfection of wisdom teachings. So those monks and nuns, students studying in the big monastic institutions are doing great in their study. And it seems in Tibet, inside Tibet also, there are many students engaged in the study of the philosophy sincerely, and there are many students also down in South India also engaged in sincere study of pursuit of the study of the great classic texts. So having the purpose of your study should be that you integrate the teaching within yourself so that you develop further and further to become a better and better person. So as I said the other day also, day before yesterday, because of the great Abbot Chandarakshita's kindness, we have the study of Madhyamaka philosophical texts through logic and reason. And as these texts, Three Principal Paths also says, we need to integrate the teaching within oneself. As is mentioned in Abhisamaya Alankara, that Bodhichitta is that intention to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then the Mongolian students also in these big monastic institutions, I would like to request you to continue with your pursuit of study. The monks in general there, and then in the Mongolians, regarding the Mongolians, of course you have faced great adversity in the past. So since the time my first visit to Mongolia, I have noticed that so you who are in the outer Mongolia, of course you may have connections with people inside the inner Mongolia, and also Kalmykia, Buryatia, and so forth. So that you'll see that these places are the places where the Buddha Dhamma had spread before but declined in the meantime. And with regard to the inner Mongolia, I have a special connection because one of my Tsenshab Ngutub Tsogni was from Abak in inner Mongolia. And he was one of the main person helping me with debate. Of course, I had my tutors too, but Ngutub Tsogni was the main teacher in debate. So my admiration and special interest in the Madhyamaka view was actually kindled by Ngutub Tsogni. So he was very fond of me. So Ngutub Tsogni told me, so he told me that your senior tutor is a great scholar in the classic philosophical texts. and explaining them. And then Yongdzin Tichang Rinpoche is someone who is a great master of the Lamrim tradition. And so you should be able to integrate both of these qualities within yourself. So I have been doing my best to do that. And then in the 3 seats of learnings and the monastic institutions, of course, you have been doing your studies very well, and I would still urge you to continue to do so. So this great study of the great classic texts is something which has held the Tibetan spirit, which holds the Tibetan spirit. So this is like the soul of the Tibetan identity. So though Tibetans have suffered so much under the Chinese, we have been able to keep this tradition for over 1,000 years. Therefore, though there are opposition to to religion, saying that it is blind faith, I mean, we would be able to see that what they are saying is just out of ignorance. But because we have studied them and have integrated these teachings within ourselves, this tradition of the Buddha Dharma in general and the Nalanda tradition in particular is like our soul. So for you Mongolians also, this is the soul of your identity. So even in terms of this, the nation, this is important, this tradition. And then, as I said before, even amongst the scientists, there are people who take interest in our tradition of logic and epistemology as well as our philosophy and so forth. So this is my own experience. So we should not feel that we are left alone. Outside of the human community. But today, everybody is talking about peace in the world peace. But for true world peace, we need to have peace within ourselves, our mental peace, for which we have the resources within our tradition, which is not based on mere blind faith, but established or demonstrated through reason and logic. So that is all. Please do your best. Question and answer session, please. Do you have any question?
Your Holiness, by these 3-day precious teachings from Your Holiness, the root guru, we Mongolians are very much blessed. Thank you very much for your spiritual guidance on this most important explanation of this profound text composed by Tsongkhapa, the crowning glory amongst the all-learned masters of the land of snow. Now we are moving to the question and answer session, where we have 4 questions in total. First question is by Namona from Ulaanbaatar.
Ганри рави горвын шинхан дэр пандан дэва малу жүнвинэ жанрасиг ван дандан жамцое шаббат срета барту данжуржиг.
This is the long life prayer of His Holiness. We have many Buddhist devotees who give great offerings, praise and chant prayers and chantings, and also they build stupas. What do you think when we participate in those activities?
디디니 인가서다 저 소사 집중
So of course, these are part of our purification of negativities and accumulation of merit. So making offerings, doing prostrations, reciting mantras like Om Mani Padme Hum mantra or Aryatara mantra or Miksema. We do these practices. And then also building stupas, printing texts, scriptures. So these also, in the long run, we are intending to do this for the benefit of becoming enlightened, for the benefit of all sentient beings. As in the three principal paths mentions, if we could do these practices within the framework of these three principal paths, it would be best. But even if you cannot do this in detail, you may still do these practices of making offerings in the monasteries and doing prayers and so forth with your firm, single-pointed faith in your masters, spiritual teachers. Of course, these practices can also be done for your own success and long life and so forth. But if you can actually bring forth these three principal paths within your practice, that would be good. Although it may you may mix it up with the mix it with those of the 8 worldly concerns. And then next.
The second question is from Pyamsuran.
What
is enlightenment? What happens when we reach the enlightenment? So briefly, to talk briefly about it, the enlightenment. You know, we have over 100 volumes of the words of the Buddhas translated, and then within which there are the texts on Vinaya and emptiness and so forth. So by taking refuge in the Buddha and following the Buddha, the Nalanda masters who didn't follow merely on the basis of faith, but in the Nalanda monastic institution, the center of learning, which became a center for the study of Buddha's teachings. So these masters who are called the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme ones and so forth, most of them came from the Nalanda monastic institution. So we should understand that the Buddha Dharma is something which deals with the reality, the facts, and through reason. As it is mentioned in the Mahayana Uttara Tantra, the enlightened body of the Buddhas radiate all time, and that the emptiness nature of the mind of sentient beings and Buddhas is not differentiated, and that the sentient beings have the potential for enlightenment. Therefore, they have the Buddha nature or the essence of Buddha. So they show us the example. These Nalanda masters are our examples that we can look up at. So we have the tradition whereby we have both profound and extensive path aspects. And in order to be able to do the practice, we need to understand what the teaching is about, what these extensive teachings are, what is the profound teaching. Mere faith alone, saying I take refuge in the Buddha and so forth, alone will not suffice. the 10 powers and the 18 unmixed qualities of the Buddhas and so forth have to do with our practice. And for that, it's very important to study the Dharma so that we could practice the 3 trainings and the 3 principal aspects of the path, and then journey along the path. After having said that, may I become a Buddha, if you just keep sleeping, of course you will not reach there. So in order to reach the Buddhahood, we need to observe the precepts like those of the layperson's 5 precepts of the lay people, and also the monastic precepts of the novice and fully ordained monks. And on the basis of this, keeping our precepts, we need to develop single-pointed concentration. Of course, we do this in connection with tantric deity yoga practices as well. And then mainly, we need to reflect on and actually think through about those of the selflessness of persons and phenomena. So you should feel that my goal is Buddhahood, and for that I need to practice the 3 principal aspects of the path: the renunciation, the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, and the view of emptiness. So of course those who cannot think much in terms of reason, they should still keep their faith in the teaching. And next, please.
Next question is from our audience, which is saying how Buddha's teachings impact positively on family and children's ethics.
So, in practically speaking, an easy text that we can deal with would be Bodhisattva Charyavatara, a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life, or engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds. So study this text, and particularly the chapter on patience and the chapter on meditation, chapter 6 and chapter 8, so that we do not have to talk much about philosophy as such, but when you practice in connection with your family life, you could tell your children to be kind and good and not misbehave, so that people would see your children as example, how good they are, how nice these children are, and not talk bad about these children, saying that, oh, these children are immoral from this family. And then, as Shantideva says, all happiness in the world, joy and happiness in the world can come from wishing others to be happy. All joy and suffering comes from wishing oneself alone to be happy. So even though you may not have extensive study of philosophy and so forth, but you could still use the text, Shantideva's text, to overcome anger and be kind, So you can teach your children how it's good to be kind and a good person and not to be angry or short-tempered, without having to tell them that, oh, if you do this practice, you'll reach Buddhahood or and liberation or anything like that. But on a daily basis, not to have fights with other children, so that your own children would be peaceful, and the others, neighbors also would see you as a good example to them.
Now, I have the one last question. It is also from the audience. I'm going to read it out. Could you please explain the importance of Buddhism to create democratic humanitarian society with integrity?
So this is true. Within this human society, there is sometimes castes or a system where we differentiate people on the basis of the social backgrounds, like like status. So the queens and kings, of course, in our history, there have been kings and queens and also religious leaders. So of course there are good sides to them, but there were also bad sides to these. And then later democracy developed. So few people who are rulers, like kings and queens or religious leaders, because they oppressed and exploited the general public. So if you are genuinely concerned for the well-being of others, it would be good. You would be doing things which are morally right. And today, we have systems where there is this totalitarian system, authoritarian system, where people do not have, where the leaders don't keep their power to themselves. But if you actually think of the well-being of others, the general public, you will be able to have a good democratic and humanitarian society. And in this, Buddhism can help.
Your Holiness, the root guru, thank you very much for this profound explanation and answers. Now, this particular session for question and answer is over. Now, the monks are going to recite the Shabdan Soltup, the prayer to Your Holiness the Dalai Lama, the root guru, followed by monks will offer Flaming Gegen, and Dalai Lama will offer the mandala, Kusuntuk mandala.
누구 가 그런 게 심기시던 고삼 잠을 뛰어 레벨
Oh, His Holiness wants to do the semki, the generation of mind.
His Eminence Lama is showing His Holiness the Dalai Lama the Tsongkhapa sacred statue, which was graciously gifted by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Kandan Dushala Monastery, the center of Mongolian Buddhists.
현재 너저러적 뒤도 적덕어서 남하고 노정어서 제도 딱도션 톱던 적도 권도 아랍더러의 기선스러제점 여주러적 작노버드모 정도의 도자전 악선한게 선서닥면정 과션너외저도 하람나나 군선저처 잠서달선적 맞존스러저절외 전로이던 템브렐러와 메데덴보이던 낙섬닥외도도제 원변노건 델렉이 너르도쇼
나다 딜레버리
So I forgot to do this.
Is graciously granting the Bodhichitta vow to the audience. Thank you very much, Your Holiness.
저상가 아다 선지시던 고삼 잡으리 내 덕이 아다 슝디드만 라체 엔 디제브리
So I forgot to do this. I was thinking of doing the Bodhichitta ceremony.
덕이 시작이
As I said before,
남지 주야기 최고르디
to
산제기
the teaching
섭시도 차디요
pertaining to the
선지
attainment of Buddhahood.
실샤네 에네 살롱 저야 차데바 이르다네
The teaching on Bodhichitta is the most profound aspect. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to do the ceremony for Bodhichitta. You have the three statues of Je Rinpoche and his two chief disciples, new statues. And so, imagine the Buddha and also the Indian masters like Master Nagarjuna and his disciples and followers, and Master Asanga and his disciples and followers, and particularly the Tibetan masters of the lineage of the Tibetan tradition, such as Master Chandarakshita, and all the different masters of the different traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, and particularly Je Rinpoche and his disciples, the two chief disciples. Of course, view of emptiness is very important, but this is a principle shared with the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas as well. But the factor by which delineates you, which delineates the attainment of Buddhahood or not, is bodhicitta. And so in front of you, imagine the Buddha and the other masters, and then the Je Rinpoche as your witness for this bodhicitta ceremony. And I am your messenger, dear messenger to you. As Je Rinpoche himself said in the praise to Buddha for teaching dependent origination, where he says in verse number 53, following such a teacher and having become a renunciate, having studied the conqueror's words not too poorly, this monk who strives in the yogic practice, such is the depth of his reverence to the great seer. And so I, serving as the messenger to you, imagine all the Buddha and Bodhisattvas and your root and lineage gurus will say the prayer, which is just a one-verse prayer, and then we'll use the verse for bodhicitta. So what you need to do, what is important is to be kind-hearted. So as this text says, I seek refuge in the three jewels, I confess each and every wrongdoing, I rejoice in the virtues of all beings, I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. And so as the Kadampa masters have said, with Bodhichitta, you'll be able to purify your negativities, and also you will be able to complete your accumulation of merit and stores of merit and wisdom as well. And so, in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. And so, having called the Buddhist, so in this text you say, having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, enlightened practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. Please sit crouched or kneel on your right knee.
Oh, yeah. Any? Did I?
So perhaps you may not repeat after me, but just recite these lines. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess all misdeeds individually. I rejoice in the virtuous deeds of all beings. I take to mind the Buddha's enlightenment. To the Buddha, Dharma, and highest assembly, I seek refuge until I am enlightened. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I shall generate the mind of awakening. Having generated the mind of highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in the delightful supreme practices of enlightenment. May I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Please recite these yourselves for the second time. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the Buddha's enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests, and I shall enact the delightful supreme enlightened practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So at this time, during the third recitation, make your determination that you will make this life of human life a meaningful one by dedicating yourself for the benefit of all sentient beings in their service, and for that to become enlightened. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until enlightenment is reached to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful, supreme, and enlightening deeds. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then we'll also say these lines from Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So, which says that today in the presence of all present, I invite Hans Micros as my guest. No, sorry. Just as the previous lords of bliss conceived enlightenment spirit, and just as they successfully lived by the Bodhisattva practices, likewise for the sake of all that lives, do I conceive the spirit of enlightenment, and shall I too successfully follow the practices. And then, in order to further this, today my life has borne fruit, having well obtained this human existence. I've been born into the family, and now am one of Buddha's children. Thus, whatever actions I do from now on must be nice in accord with the family tradition. Never shall I do anything to disgrace this holy, faultless family. And then there are those lines in rejoicing, having these develop the bodhicitta within yourself. So just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of trash, likewise, by coincidence, I have found the enlightenment spirit within me. It is the supreme elixir that overcomes the lord of death. It is the inexhaustible treasure that eliminates all poverty in the world. It is the supreme medicine that cures the world's disease. It is the evergreen that shelters all beings, wandering, tired on the roads of life. It is a universal bridge, and so forth. And then at the end it says, today, in the presence of all protectors, I invite Hans Macaris as my guest to Sugathahood, and in the meantime to temporal happiness, gods, demigods, and others, rejoice. So with this, we complete this the discourse of Dharma this time, and you should be stay relaxed and at ease, be happy. And so, as we say, you are your own masters. You should not just think that everything will be cared of by the Lama, but you should do your practice.
Your Holiness, the root guru, on behalf of all the monks and devotees, I would like to sincerely thank for this precious Bodhichitta vow granted by Your Holiness. Now, I would like to invite the Buddhist devotees from Bayonghongor province to recite the 6-syllable mantra of the Avalokitesvaraya. Our big thanks go to the Buddhist devotees from Bayonhongor province for reciting the 6-syllable mantra in a unique traditional way. Now, I would like to invite Venerable Topshentur, the head of the NGO Laming Gegen Mongol Sunche, to deliver a closing remark.
Нэг хоёр.
Танцшгүй зарилгын ачид үндэс язгуурын багш Дэгийн гэгэнтэн 14-р Далай багшийн монголчуудад зориулсан намын айлтгар Монгол сүнчээ энэ жил 2021 оны 3-р сарын 11-ээс
Annual Buddhist event teaching for Mongolians by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as also known as Mongolian Sungchu, has been held between the 11th to the 13th of March 2021.
The annual Buddhist event, Teachings for Mongolia by Your Holiness the Dalai Lama, the root guru, also known as Mongolian Sunche, has been successfully held between 11th to 13th March 2021. On behalf of all Mongolian Buddhist devotees and myself, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama, the root guru, for bestowing the holy Dharma teachings for 3 days.
энэ намын айлтгарыг хамтран зохион байгуулсан Монголын Бодны шашны төв Гандан нэгчлэн хий Баянгор аймгийн засаг даргын тамгын газар Орхон аймаг дэх Баянгор аймгийн нутгийн зөвлөлд талархлаа илэрхийлье. Мөн энэ намын айлтгарыг их орон даяар шууд дамжуулан хүргэхэд интернет захимжуулж бүрэн хариуцсан ажилласан Монгол сад хувьцаа компани хамт олондоо гүн талархлаа илэрхийлье.
Also, this teaching was organized with the help of Gandan Dikchilang Monastery, the Center of Mongolian Buddhism, Office of the Governor of Bayonhongor Province, Gong Gandan Bidling Monastery of Laming Gigeng, and the Council of Bayonhongor Province in Orkhon Aimak. In addition, I would like to thank Mongol Sat and UBS TV staff for providing internet connection and broadcasting this sacred teaching throughout the country.
Дэгийн гэгэнтэн Далай багш таны өлгийн хоо 100 галууд батчин нийт Монголын ард түмнийг авралдаан багтаан их Монголын орноо дахин залрахын өрөөлийг тайлбая.
May Your Holiness, the Dalai Lama, the root guru, remain with us for 100 years to bless the people of Mongolia, and we sincerely pray that you visit us again and again in the future. Thank you very much, Venerable Topshen Now this sacred teaching, precious teaching, is being over, which continued for 3 days. And finally, I would like to say the Migzemar on behalf of all the monks and devotees from Mongolia. Great treasury of non-referential compassion, Avalokiteshvara, powerful Lord of flawless wisdom, Manjushri, and destroyer of all the hosts of Maras, Lord of secrets, Vajrapani, crowning glory amongst all the learned masters of the land of snows, Tsongkhapa, Lobsang Takpa, at your lotus feet I pray. Thank you very much for your holiness.
가. 2시.
Okay, that's